Welcome back here to the Jordy Culotta Show, live on this Monday morning, presented and driven daily by Go Chevrolet. Stop in and see the boys, Lee Carney, Nick Richard, and the crew down there in LaPlace. If you're looking for a brand new model of Chevrolets, if you're looking for used cars, they've got a new lot of used cars over here in Baton Rouge on Florida Boulevard. Easy to find them on Florida Boulevard. Everything's online at GEAUXChevrolet.com. Always appreciate our next guest and his college football knowledge that he brings in, life knowledge, basketball knowledge. If you were following him on Twitter during March Madness and during the college basketball season. In fact, I looked up and he is traveling the state of Alabama with Bruce Pearl and Brian Harsin right now and some of the Auburn faithful. He is a proud Auburn alum, but right now the face, in my opinion, of anybody who analyzes the sport of college football. He's the best in the business. He's over at the SEC Network. He works at ESPN, was a part of the XFL. He's got a radio show over in Alabama that you can listen to that's fantastic, and he joins us now. That is Cole Cubelic. Good morning, man. How are you?
Hey, you're doing great, Jordy. Thanks for having me again.
Yes, sir. FCS championship yesterday, which was a fantastic football game, came down to the end. 23-21, Sam Houston wins the game over South Dakota State. I know you were very invested in this league during this time of the year. How do you think the experiment went? What did you think of yesterday's game?
Oh, I thought the experiment was great. The game yesterday, first and foremost, was fantastic. Other than the delay and the weather, I thought it was pretty unfortunate that, these young men sort of went through what they went through to even be able to put together a spring season, which, as I did on Twitter, I thank all of them for being able to do it because I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was invested in it. I was hooked on it. I was sitting around on Saturday nights trying to find, Northeastern State games and, trying to find South Dakota State games, Southern Illinois games. So, it was cool to be able to have. But, that game yesterday, Sam Houston State jumps out to a pretty big lead. Quarterback Mark Gronowski goes out after the first series for South Dakota State. They look like they're in trouble. We get the delay, which leads to a 3-minute halftime, which then leads to all of a sudden, South Dakota State finds their running game. That 85 run by Isaiah Davis in the third was his third touchdown in the fourth quarter was just incredible. He goes for 178. And then all of a sudden, quarterback Eric Schmid brings his team back down and with 16 seconds throws a 10-yard touchdown pass to go up, who, by the way, converted 2 fourth downs on that same drive to come down and take the lead at the end of the game. So this is a fantastic game. Sam Houston State's come from behind in 3 consecutive second halves. And you think about what they did in this playoff run. Not everybody listens to your show knows all the names, but most of them know North Dakota State and most of them know James Madison. And this year you should have known South Dakota State because they were the number 1 overall seed. They ran through those teams to be able to find a way to win a national championship. And Casey Keeler becomes the first coach to win a national championship at 2 different FCS schools. So, Jordy, it was a lot of fun. It was very cool. My personal opinion, as I've stated on Twitter, which is getting a lot of blowback right now, is that this thing should live in the spring. And when I say that, I think a lot of people think it's just selfish and it's just me that wants it. But I'm trying to think of long-term sustainability. Yep. I love collegiate athletics. I love the opportunities that collegiate athletics provides because I know what it did for me and I know what it did for a lot of other people. I am concerned about the realistic sustainability of FCS football 20, 30, 40 years from now. We all know that the seismic shift of FBS football, the Power 5 and the Group of 5 is going to continue to move away. Go look at Stanford's schedule this year. They play all Power 5 opponents. Go look at Georgia's future schedule. They got years with Florida State and Oklahoma on their schedule. They got Ohio State and Clemson in the same year that they're playing. Alabama, Texas, future non-conference schedules. This thing's going to expand at some point, and I think more teams are going to get away from playing lower-tier opponents because they're going to feel like even with 2-3 losses, an elite schedule is going to give them a better opportunity to find a way to get into the college football playoffs. So I just think that there's a spot for it to live in the spring. I think a legitimate media rights deal would take place. I actually think attendance would go up.
Yeah.
You're in Louisiana, so you know it kind of like I know it. And the majority of the people that are blowing back against me are North Dakota State fans. Right. And I understand that because they could sustain no matter what because they're the only game in town, and it's a massive deal, and it's really cool to see. I've been there and I've covered a few games. I have a ton of respect for the program, how it's managed, the fan, the town, all of it. But whether it's Jacksonville State, whether it's Samford, whether it's Alabama A&M, whether it's Alabama State, a lot of those fans, and you know this with McNeese and Nichols and a lot of the schools there, those fans are making a decision on Saturdays. Yep. Are they going there or are they going to Baton Rouge? And here, are you going to Tuscaloosa or are you going to Auburn? Or are you going to stay and watch your team play? And I've talked to multiple athletic directors that say, we know we lose a large portion of that audience every week that goes to those other games. And if you could keep those teams in town, keep those fans in town in the spring and increase attendance by 5,000 to 8,000 people per game, that actually would cover what that pay game usually means. Mm-hmm. But I still think you can keep the pay game. I think you have your traditional spring practice in the fall, and then you play your spring game to open the FBS season at the end of August or early September, and you still get your paycheck, and that counts as your spring game. Then you take the next few months off, and even if you wanted to try to circumvent the NFL issue by having a regional pro day or combine in December, late December, when the scouts are not on the road as much, I think you could do that and gain NFL interest. And playing in the spring, I know the draft is a big concern. I know the NFL and preparing for the NFL is a big concern. But number one, you're getting more film on. Number two, those scouts are going to have more opportunities to be able to come watch you compete in practice and in games in person, because now they're having to split all that time with all the other teams in their region. So you get more of their attention there. And I'm not going to not do something that's going to be in the best interest for my entity for the next 20, 50 years because of 1 or 2% of the participants. That's not a real decision-making factor.
A very passionate answer from our guy Cole Cubelic on that issue that brings up very valid points. And we've seen schools down here, Nichols, Southeastern, McNeese, maneuver their schedules in the fall to start playing on Thursday, Wednesday nights, so they can start to try and bite into that audience that they're missing out on Saturdays. I love the idea of the spring session. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then when you roll it out to say that you can still keep those games in the fall that mean a lot to the overall budget of these athletic departments, man, I'd love to see what the decision makers say when they're presented the choices of these opportunities. Cole, what do you make of the strategy of Jimbo Fisher continuing to go after Nick Saban in Alabama here on the speaking trail of the offseason in college football?
Well, I never get too upset about the speaking trail. I think you have to take some context with it of who is the audience, because a lot of the times, these guys are going to the Baton Rouge Quarterback Club or the Birmingham Quarterback Club or the Big Oil Tycoon Houston Oil Club, whatever it is. And they have to make those people happy. They know that they're placating to a fan base. They know that there's probably some big checkbooks that's in that audience that they need to keep happy and need to keep rolling into that athletic department. So they're going to shift their message just a little bit. I think the one thing that we forget is the relationship that these two have. I mean, they've known each other since high school. I mean, these guys are from the same area. Obviously, they're intertwined in all the coaching circles, and it's not just the time they spent together at LSU. They knew each other well before that. So it's not really surprising. I think he's a little bit calculated as far as the context and who he's delivering the message to, but I also think that he knows that this is a guy that he has regular conversations with, and it's not something that he or Nick view as personal. So I also am someone who just doesn't believe in bulletin board material, but that's just me. I think the problem with bulletin board material is if you need that to motivate you to be a good football player, what are you going to do the other 8 or 10 weeks that you play that no one says anything that pisses you off? Right. Like, are you just going Michael Jordan making stuff up every week? I mean, you better get creative. Because not every team's going to say something that makes you mad that you're going to consider offensive before you play them. So in that case, you better be able to find something that's going to be able to motivate you, or you're only going to be a good player 2 or 3 weeks out of the year. So, I don't think that it's something that makes a huge difference either way.
Not everybody can work up LaBradford Smith, the story that Michael Jordan did for the Washington Bullets.
What a body to take.
Poor LaBradford Smith, man. I never even said it to him. For God's sake, does A&M have a roster worthy of Jimbo barking a little bit this offseason?
I think he does. I think that a lot of people, quarterback is quarterback. We know what that is. That's if they're going to be good, that position's got to be good. Haynes King is a guy that I think can move around a little bit, do some things. I think he's got a good athletic ability. Zach Calzada is a guy that I think has a big, strong arm, can push the ball down the field, a little bit more of a pocket guy, but they got a really nice group of tight ends. The offensive line concerns, I think, will be offset by one, Jameer Johnson transferring in from Tennessee. He's a plug-and-play starter at one tackle. Kenyon Green, whether he stays at left tackle or comes back down to guard, you'll have Layden Robinson opposite him, who filled in against South Carolina and looked exceptional. So if those two are at guard, I think they have the best guard combo in the SEC going into the season. And you got a great defense. I mean, DeMarvin Leal is going to be a first-round pick over there. Michael Clemens is back. He feels like he's been there for 8 years at defensive end. You got most of your second. I mean, basically, you lose 2 of your top 22 on defense.
Yeah.
So I think the numbers are there, and we know what Elko has done has just been fantastic. And you got guys like A-Chain that you're going to be able to move around and do some different things. And Nia Smith's going to be a real problem. I think you'll see more two-back sets from A&M this year. My biggest concern, actually, even past quarterback, is wide receiver. I wonder, do they have a big play wide receiver that they're going to be able to depend on? If somebody breaks out there, and Demas might be that guy, then yeah, I think A&M's got a chance to be maybe the next in line to challenge Alabama. I think that comes down to A&M and LSU. I think Auburn's going to be a little bit behind this year, but those are the two teams that I think have the opportunity to at least be knocking on the doorstep of Alabama's house.
I believe that Kenyon Green is probably the best offensive lineman in the league. He was a one-time LSU commit.
Yeah, most people don't even have. I mean, these top 5 lists that are coming out, I don't understand it. I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, I think Charles Cross is a good player. I think there's a couple other guys that are getting some love, getting some mention in this league. He's a good player, but Kenyon Green is the best offensive lineman returning in the SEC. I think if he goes to tackle, you can have a different guard conversation. I think Ed Ingram has a chance to be the best guard in the league. If he stays at guard, I think, again, Charles Cross is a good player, but based on what they've done, I might take Nick Broker at Ole Miss before I would take Charles. I mean, he's another guy, Nick Broker, that's getting no love. Now, unfortunately, Randy Clements was let go in Ole Miss, who is a fantastic offensive line coach, and I'm surprised nobody has scooped him up to either come in and be an analyst or be their offensive line coach or assistant O-line coach. But that guy made that Ole Miss offensive line totally different last year. So watch the left tackle at Ole Miss, too. He's another kid that can play.
Green would make this LSU unit feel more comfortable with their guys that they have there. They have some unproven guys. They've got some guys like Ed Ingram who come back with some accolades and some reputation to him. But the depth on this offensive line here in Baton Rouge at LSU is a cause for concern for people that are buying tickets and are following the program. What do you make of what they have going up front?
I actually think that, I don't know many coaches, Jordy, in the league. I could maybe even expand that to college football in general, that are going to tell you that they're comfortable with their offensive line depth. There's not a lot of guys that, and it kind of comes down to this, and now we're seeing another rule change that's going to affect us even more. The only way to be a good offensive lineman is to get in full pads and do it against somebody else that's trying to make you look bad, full speed. Or even be in shells and be able to lock up a little bit. But going to these extra helmet practices, that does nothing for O linemen and D linemen. It may help D linemen just a little bit, and I could take your entire crew out there and we can run T-boards, go through the chutes, push the sled, work on our pass sets. You're not going to be a good offensive lineman. I got to get you in pads, and you got to be doing it against guys that are trying to kick your ass. It's the only way to grow and get better. So therefore, game experience becomes that much more important. Trey Smith was a perfect example of this 2 years ago. The guy at Tennessee, practiced 2 times in full pads before the season because of the issue he had with blood clots. Was he going to play? Was he not going to play? How are they going to manage it? Well, weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he didn't look like himself. Well, all of a sudden, you go watch week 7, week 8, week 10, and he looked like first-round talent because the game became his practice. The game became his reps that he needed to try to get better, and that was about all he had. So I think when you looked at the fact that you got an experienced center coming back, which can manage everything and can handle everything, one of the best guards in the league coming back, you got one tackle that's played a ton of football, so all the experience we talked about is going to be able to be just fine over there. And then at least a few guys that will compete at the other tackle that have been in games and have some game experience. I don't know if I'd feel terrible about it when I put it up against some of the other teams in this league that don't even have guys that have played a lot of meaningful football. So you got some experience, you got some leadership. I think the middle will be fine. You want to ramp it up a little bit at one tackle and you get some experience at the other tackle. So, and we know you're going to have that tight end help, which I think always helps. You're going to have guys that are going to be able to line up, and there's going to be bonus bigs in the lineup for LSU. A lot of folks are talking about all these young kids for LSU and the young guys, what they do. Is Cole Taylor still around? Because nobody's talking about him.
No, you're right.
I kind of liked what I saw from that kid late in the year. So, he was who was the big-ass, 6'9" tight end? This is right when I was playing that they had. I think he wore a number in the teens.
Was this 99 you're talking about?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he was just he looked like a power forward out there playing tight end. I can't remember the kid's name, but that's kind of who he reminded me of being out there. I remember seeing this big when we were playing, being on the sideline, and they were just big 6'8" looking tight end for LSU. But he's a guy who I think can also help. And when you're going to have, whether it's a fullback, H-back, tight end in the game a lot, that can sort of ease what that offensive line is going to have to do. We know, people can not like this, say what they want about this. I think Joe Burrow would agree with this because I think he addressed it in his Heisman speech. I don't think LSU wins the national title without Thaddeus Moss. I truly believe that. He was that critical to what that team was at the line of scrimmage. And I think if you ask Joe that tomorrow, he'd say, absolutely. He's like, that dude with his chips and his blocks and some of the critical catches, he just meant a ton to what we did. So they're going to have a guy like that that's going to be able to help do those things, and that takes a little bit of heat off what the offensive line absolutely has to do on a series-by-series basis.
You've been traveling the state with Harsin and the crew and seeing the feedback from the Auburn faithful. How have they accepted the, a relative outsider as their new head coach?
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, because they just don't. I think a lot of Auburn fans didn't really know him. We know how secluded we can get as maybe more college football fanatics than fans, Jordy. There's a lot of LSU fans that they care about LSU. There are a lot of Auburn fans, they care about Auburn. They're not watching Mountain West. They weren't watching Sun Belt. They didn't know he was at Texas. So, number one, they don't really care. And number two, they just don't pay a ton of attention to it. But Brian Harsin can coach. And my only concern with Brian Harsin is recruiting. And it's not that I don't think he can recruit. It's just that we know recruiting in this league is very different. And to be successful recruiting in this league is not something that a lot of people just come in and are able to do. If he is, he's going to be fine. The intensity, the consistency, the focus, the message that's delivered, the buy-in already that I've heard about and seen, talked to some players about, I believe is there. And I think one thing that he's done that I really appreciate is he has extra coaches on his staff. And he brings his offensive line coach in from Boise and he makes him his tight end coach. They keep Kendall Simmons on staff, who's one of the best offensive linemen in Auburn football history. He's on staff. He's played quarterback. He's coached quarterback. He's coordinated offense. We say the same thing about Mike Bobo. So, and then he brings his old offensive coordinator from Boise in as an analyst. So he has got extra brain power that can focus on the development of the offensive line and the quarterback position. And those are two positions at Auburn that have lacked development over the last 5 or 6 years. There's some talent there, but the development has not come with that. And if they can begin to get that going a little bit, I think that'll go a long way in helping him be successful in the West. But he's a guy that when you spend time around as a football nerd, a football junkie, football guy, it's impossible not to like him, just the way that he handles and carries himself.
Was Nicky Savoy the tight end?
No. I got to go back and look at it.
Yeah, well, you're killing me. I'm racking my head. You've been here 20 minutes, and it's been great. Let me just get one more from you. TJ Finley announced that he was leaving the program last week. You and I have been high on Max Johnson since really even before watching him play last year, and now the competition is down to really he and Brennan with Garrett Nussmeier as a true freshman quarterback there for some insurance. How do you feel about this quarterback position for LSU going into the offseason?
Well, I feel great about it. And I think this was probably one of those instances where this was best for both parties. I think TJ has the potential to be a very good college quarterback. TJ needs reps, and it kind of goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about with offensive linemen and that development. He needs first team, second team reps, competitive reps, meaningful reps against elite competition. And at LSU, he probably wasn't going to get that. Because we obviously have seen what Myles can do and we've seen what Max can do. and it was going to be tough to be able to crack the top two with those guys on the roster. So if he can land somewhere else where he can begin to get those reps and get some coaching and get the development with the ones and twos, I think he's got a chance to be good. And then I think, too, this sort of eases a little bit of the decision-making process for Ed Orgeron, because now it's a two-man race going into the fall, and these two can battle it out, and you don't have to find extra reps for another guy, which take away from the reps of whoever your starter is going to be. It's the biggest thing that I thought killed Georgia last year. Like, everybody thought that just Jamie Newman leaving is what hurt Georgia. Wrong. What hurt Georgia last year is Jamie Newman stole 3 months of first-team reps. He stole them. He went in there like the Hamburglar with that mask on, and he put them in a bag, and he took them, and he walked out.
It was like Saban sent him in there.
Exactly. And so they were gone. And so some of those, not as many, but some of those reps were going to be gone for LSU, and now they won't be. So there aren't a lot of instances from a transfer perspective where I kind of sit back and look at it and say, you know what, this is probably the best possible scenario for everyone involved. But I actually do believe that for LSU in this instance. And I think TJ will latch on somewhere. You know, you hear things about Texas and Penn State and maybe Auburn, and, you know, he'll have a shot somewhere. And I think it can be a shot at a good school where he can go in, get some good coaching, find the reps that he needs to develop, because that development is needed right now. And maybe he can turn into a good college quarterback, maybe get drafted, end up in the NFL one day. He's got the ability. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No doubt about it. You had to love the Najee pick to Pittsburgh, huh?
I absolutely did. I think it was the right pick. I think it's the right move. Offensive line was where a lot of people wanted to go, and I understand that. I don't blame that. I just think if you're going to go one more year with Roethlisberger, try to get one more run in, you need someone who can help you out the most now. And Najee does that now. You know, he's a guy that will, rarely does an offensive lineman come in and really impact things year one. So 2-3 years down the road, Najee still helps, but an offensive lineman would have maybe helped year 2, year 3 a little bit more. I mean, the guy catches the ball out of the backfield. He's great in pass protection. Here's one of the weird things about this. We hear this for some reason, we took a wrong turn on the whole every down back phrase a long time ago. And like Alvin Kamara and guys like that are what we view as every down back, like Travis Etienne. You heard Urban say he's our third down back. Well, I mean, don't we get 3rd and 1? Like, don't we get goal line situations on 3rd down, like 3rd and inches to try to score? Like, are you using your back out of the backfield, your lightweight back, your scat back? Is he your short yardage back? So I think Najee is actually the epitome of every down back. You know, he can handle pass pro, he can catch the ball, he can help you in short yardage situations. I think he'll be a huge benefit for what the Steelers are able to do offensively this year. Unfortunately, the division has taken a big step forward because Cleveland's been non-existent for a few years. Joe looks like he's going to be fine, especially adding Jamar there in Cincinnati. That thing will take a step forward. And Baltimore, you know, they are what they are, which is a team that plays nasty defense and got a playmaker at quarterback. So the division's tough as hell. But, yeah, I'm glad to see Najee there to be able to at least help sort of push through for one more year, see what can happen, and then obviously they got to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback after this.
That is 25 minutes with the one of the brightest football minds that you hear breaking it down nationally on the SEC Network, on ESPN. He is a co-host of the 3-Man Front on WJOX Radio from 10 to 2, which in my opinion is the best radio show in the Southeastern Conference. Cole Cubelic is on Twitter and as always very kind with his time here with us on the Jordy Culotta Show. Thank you, my friend.
Anytime, Jordy, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Here he is, Cole Cubelic, checking in this morning. A Pittsburgh Steelers fanatic.
Jesus, that got him going, didn't it?
I was just thinking I was going to get 30 seconds on the way out.
But let me tell you one more thing about the Steelers.
They wanted him to go offensive line. I love the pick on Najee.